Like all societies of the world, Somalis have a self-image about themselves as a society. They believe to be a society free of class hierarchy and social injustices, to be a blood-related family that shares language, culture, and religion, and to have the minimum of differences. It's a very appealing and comfy self-image. However, when closely examined, it becomes apparent that this self-image is mere mirage or self-deceit. Behind this veneer facade is hidden one of the cruelest and oldest injustices in the world. This is a discrimination and marginalization of some of the clans that make up the Somali family. Clans that share language, culture, and religion with the rest of Somalis. Clans who have been an integral part of the Somali society all through its history with essential functions and roles. It is a long-standing crime and a centuries-old practice that is rooted in a variety of religious and socio-economic myths that each generation passes on to the next. Thousands and tens of thousands of Somalis in every corner of the Somali country live with this marginalization. All aspects of their life is shaped by this practice, from the birth of the individual to her demise. It limits the life opportunities of the members of this community, be it education, work, and progress. It also touches the most intimate details of a person's life, including the choice of a spouse. Where did this practice of marginalization come from? How does it shape its victims' lives? And what are the scars it has left on the body and psyche of this community? In this report, we will take a look at those questions and explore possible ways out. This is Dahami, the largest neighborhood of Gaboye community in Somaliland's capital, Hargeisa. Immediately, you will see this massive sand dam that endangers the whole neighborhood, a dry water course which constitutes the biggest road to residents, and piles of trash accumulated near residential houses, an unhealthy waterlog right at the doorsteps of houses to houses. This dire condition is not unique to Dahami neighborhood. It's a situation shared with every neighborhood that is home to this community in every major Somali town. They are characterized by lower socioeconomic developments. This is the physical manifestation of the inequality between the Gaboye community and the larger Somali society. This inequality is the direct result of long-enduring marginalization, oppression, and discrimination that befell on this community and its entire history.
waxaan tilmaamaynaa inay tahay bulshadani bulsho ku dhaqan geyga Soomaaliya oo dhan meel ay ku dhagan tahayba.
This community lives in all Somali inhabited regions in Somaliland, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, and in Somalia. They are everywhere, and we can say it's the oldest community in the Somali society. This hardship that befell on them is not a small one. It made them suffer a lot. It has affected them in every conceivable way, be it cultural, economically, in education, psychologically, and their social integration.
hadday dhaqan tahay, hadday dhaqaale tahay, hadday waxbarasho tahay, hadday damiir tahay, hadday tahay Allahu musta'aan iska dhaxalka bulshada dhan hadday tahay intaba waa baha dulmi taabtay weeyaan.
The most devastating effect of discrimination is perhaps internalization of the oppression that has marked the personality of Gaboye community members. The leaders of this community are the first to tell you that the biggest problems of discrimination are scars and psychological traumas endured by Gaboye people.
People have not accepted them yet. Consider this: every sin is given a collective name. and that's midgaan. Be it fornication, drug abuse, theft, dishonesty, robbery, all vices are said to be midgaan, and then they are calling us midgaan. How about that? So the child who grow up with that abuse, when he makes a small mistake, he's yelled at by saying, "Stop it, midgaan."
Normally, when this keeps happening to you, you start internalizing the oppression. You feel something that others don't. When society has negative prejudice about you, you feel that you are marked. You believe these untruths unconsciously, that you are the lowest of people. You feel it inside yourself, something that others don't experience. That used to happen when I was in school. Although I paid no attention to it, people used to call us names. Even in university, it used to happen. I remember in 2014, I had an argument with a friend of mine, and then he said, "How dare you to say that to me, you midgaan?" And I said, "Tell me how you are better than me." So it happens, and I met such discrimination, but I am not a weak person to let it get to me.
This is why I'm telling you that only the strong finishes schooling. The pulling and challenges posed by other students and the larger community force them to drop out of school.
This discrimination does not base on religion or human density, kills the drive and ambition from individual. It's about any leadership initiative and doesn't accept that. The oppressive society is partially responsible for the lost right of this individual.
This is the direct result of shaming, abuse, intimidation, and oppression that these communities suffered from 4 centuries. They are told in a variety of ways, including jokes, epitaphs, contempt, and humor, that they are not equal to the rest of the society.
Segregation waxa kamid ahayd qofka markay wax siiyaan waxba badameysin jirin xoolaba meeysin jirin.
One of the indignities that these people suffered was related to getting paid. As members of society with knowledge of crafts, they rendered service to others, but even in this, they suffered humiliation. There is this saying, the gratitude of midgaan only lasts as long as his mouth is wet. It means that these people don't show gratitude for long. They live it like that. They were injured, made disheartened for thousands of years. They have been oppressed and made life less than human.
Their problem is contempt and discrimination that they live with day in and day out. You would wonder even how they live.
Discrimination has also severely limited the livelihood opportunities of the members of this community. They are predominantly the poorest of the Somalis, which are among the poorest societies in the world. Although not studied adequately, their poverty is apparent in the derelict situations and pitiful living conditions of the neighborhoods that are home to this community. Another evidence is how they are entirely not represented in the ownership of large businesses across Somaliland. Discrimination has put a concrete ceiling to the development and progress this ex-community can achieve.
ummadan waxay ku xoogsan jirtay rayiiska kabaha birta Allahumma musta'an gudniinka.
This community used to earn living by working in barber shops, making shoes, metalwork, and circumcision. That was how they earned their daily bread, since they were discriminated against for other jobs and needed living. However, another calamity has befallen on them. They were driven out of the shoe business entirely. Second-hand shoes and imported footwear have taken over the market. You will not see locally produced shoes on display in a shop. The man who used to make bespoke shoes only repairs shoes at the pitiful place, and regular shoes are imported from China and elsewhere. In this respect, They are hit hard. Their second occupation was papa shop work. As you are aware, Ethiopians now dominate the business in Hargeisa. This salon is surrounded by members of the central clan here. They are the ones who brought Ethiopians to work for them. That work too is taken from their hands. Only the metal work is remaining. As you are aware of the countless mechanic workshops in the city, the majority of them are owned by the other society. I can say this community has no sound economic sector left for them. They have their creator. Everything is taken away from them. It's like they were not meant to be alive, I believe.
lagala wareegay asagana birti ba hadhay ama tumaalnimadii
caqabada koowaad waxa weeye wadanka dhaqaalaha dad dhaqaaloodu kobcsan yahay maaha.
The first problem is the economic challenge. Economically, they are not equal to the segments of society. They go each morning to work, come back home, and still the next morning go out empty-handed like the birds.
Muhammad Ibrahim repairs shoes at Gubanemu Market in Hargeisa. He worked for 40 years in this trade that he inherited from his father, who practiced it for 60 years. He witnessed a golden age where his trade was valuable, its production was sufficient to and monopolized the shoe market of the land. He came of age at a time when all shoes in the country were produced by the craftsmen of his clan.
I remember a time when we worked only in leather shoes we made from scratch. The customer would come to me and I would measure his foot. Then I would make him a shoe of his own choice. He could have also brought me his children or showed me a sample of their footwear, and I would make them customized shoes like tailored.
Cheap shoes imported from outside have devastated this local production. And with that, a way of life and crucial income source, a large segment of this community have been destroyed.
This has devastated the industry 100%. It participated the death of the provision, and for the people to leave it out, rare individuals with little options continue to hold on it.
Metal work is also one of the trades that this community earns a living from. Although it is underdeveloped and spectacularly falls short of meeting the demands of ever-advancing society, a large portion of these community members still earn an honest living with it. In this regard, the women are double disadvantaged. Somali society being male-dominated patriarchal, women lose out on many opportunities because of their gender. Gamboya women have the added disadvantage of being members of these marginalized communities. For instance, they face unique challenges in starting up businesses.
I know a lot of people try to find a job or start a business but did not succeed due to tribal reasons. I remember some ladies in our relatives once wanted to rent a house for business. When they met with the people in charge of the house, they were asked, "Which tribe do you belong to?" After telling their tribe, the people in charge of the house told them that the keys of the house are missing and should come back to them another time. When the time came for them to return, they were informed that the house had been rented. It's not the first, second or third time this has happened. They are considered as cannibals and robberies. Indeed, they have misconceptions about these people. This is not something all Somalis do. This is unique to Somaliland.
Some of the reasons this community is holding on these less productive crafts is lower education attainment. Although the situation has been improving year after year, the children of this community are still not in school in proportionate numbers. The number of successful graduates is even lesser. This severely limits their opportunities in life and potential for growth. Since the crafts of these communities are economically not productive, most of them are poor. Many parents who would love to send their children to school cannot afford it. Instead, children who are still young start working on those odd jobs, and with that, the vicious cycle of poverty and lack of education restarts.
It is really hard for members of this community to afford to send their children to university and schools. Most of the time, the municipality, government, and good doers pay the school fees for them. They don't have much indeed. Look at the man who has 5 kids. Does he worry about feeding them or educating them?
Children from this community face unique challenges when they go to school. Since social integration is limited and non-existent, children have little connection with the broader society before school. However, when they come to school, the realities of discrimination from which they shelter hit them in the face.
marka samurada wuxuu ku qorayaan midgaan hebel samurada ku qorayaan baqti hebel.
They will write pejoratives for them on the classboard, saying midgan, or the one who ate the impure meat, etc. Imagine coming to class looking good on your past Tuesday clothes and finding that written in the class. Someone who you are better in class than he would come earlier and write that. You will just come in none the wiser and the whole class laughs at you. You will be disheartened. You wouldn't know what is this you are being insulted for. Can a kalam be a derogatory name? It would have been something if you were insulted because of your personality, like you are dumb or have done something bad at some point in your life.
The norms of society change when our circumstances drastically change. The Somali society saw such monumental changes in the late 19th century and early years of the 20th. Colonists came to the Somali shores. Urbanization has ensued in an unprecedented pace. It seems that the long-enduring nomadic way of life is finally coming to an end. In the middle of the 20th century, Somalia attained their first modern state. This Gaboye community was not absent from all these developments. They came to the cities and were among its early settlers. They established their own neighborhoods. Their scattering has decreased, and to a large extent, their vulnerability has lessened by freeing itself from dependency states. Population density and settlement have created more opportunities and markets for the output of their craftsmen and women. Since cities are dynamic places where talent and productivity crown individuals, this community produced prominent individuals who became notable in society. Famous artists from Gaboye soon became popular across the land.
waxaan ugu soo maray Umar Duulayna soo maray naxariistii janaalaas iyo maalmahan xamar joognay Umar dadka xoroobay buu ahaa wuxuu ka sheekeynay isagoo maalin burca jooga oo
When we were in Mogadishu, Umar Dule, may rest in peace, come to us. He was a free man. He told us about an incident when he was in Bur'o. A man called him Midgan, and he slapped him. That was an assault deserving a jail time according to the penal code. The police officer asked Umar, "Why did you slap the man?" And Umar answered, "He called me a Midgan." To which the police officer replied, "Are you not?" Umar told him, "Could you be a Midgan for half an hour?" And that's where the truth lies. This discrimination that this community lived with all these years, we couldn't bear it for a minute, let alone half an hour. Muhammad Salaban Tumer is also from this community. The master of the entertainment and humor school, Abdullahi Abdishube, was also there. Hassan Diriya too. Many people like this with status and contribution to society came from this community.
It seemed like the practice of discrimination has suffered a big blow. However, in reality, the socio-economic status of these people has not improved. Although they were no longer dependent on other communities, that did not translate to full equality. The effects of hundreds of years of servitude and abject poverty has caught up with them.
taasina waxay dhashay in ay noloshii magaalo galka ay la soo gasho caydnimadii iyo saboolnimadii.
This led to this community migrating into towns with a long-standing poverty along with indignity subjected to them by the rest of society. That has greatly affected their life today in all aspects, such as education, business, political representation. That is because the historic scattering and poverty still continue to this day. They cannot elect an MP today. They cannot come together and establish a big business to compete with other members of society. That is the effect of that centuries-long practice.
In fact, it did not take long for those effects to surface. By the end of the 50s, they were displaced from their original neighborhood in Nagesa in downtown today. The justification was that their huts were not appropriate for the city center. 60 years later, Hargeisa has grown tremendously. Other communities have contributed to that development and reaped its benefits. Unfortunately, Kaboye community doesn't share in that progress.
dadkii ay aqal Soomaaliyada la wadaageen ee magaalada deganaa waa dadka fooqaqa iyo guryaha waaweyn iyo
The people who then owned Somali huts as them are now the ones who built these palaces and tall buildings for themselves. When those huts were removed from downtown, two-room houses in lawn alleys replaced them. The two rooms became 3 and 4. The 4 became a bungalow house and then the multi-storied buildings you see today. Gaboye missed out on that multi-stage development. It is probable that in the future that they may be asked again to move with the pretext that they are in the center of town. That's if they found somewhere to move to. So that's the development in Hargeisa in which this community have nothing in it.
Dami neighborhood, with this community settled 60 years ago, still symbolizes the inequality bedeviling Somaliland. Although it is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the capital, it still leads the city in crime and other factors associated with lower socioeconomic status. It lags behind in education, health services, and business development.
We cannot turn our eyes from the poor conditions of Dami neighborhood. There is a multitude of needs and suffering. First of these unmet needs are healthcare, access to education, and economy. There are many factors contributing to these problems. For the 30 years that Somaliland existed, these communities suffered from negligence, and up to now, no one has taken responsibility and is committed to helping them.
Discrimination is often two kinds, explicit and covert. The explicit discrimination is fought and defeated, even if it takes a time. But the benign covert discrimination is taken lightly and endures. The one practiced by Somalis is of the latter type. However, in marriage, it becomes explicit and the underpinning beliefs come to the foreground. It is the fact that the Somali society is yet to acknowledge that Gaboye community is its equal. They express that with a saying, Ismagenyo, which basically means the boys and girls of this community are not equal to their counterparts in the rest of society.
A Gaboye boy today cannot marry an Isaac girl, and a Gaboya girl cannot marry an Isaac boy. The Gaboya boy believes that he will not be safe and his family will not be safe if he marries an Isaac girl or anyone from other clans. That there will be never-ending troubles like what happened in the past. It happened in Hargeisa in 2017. The girl whose father tortured her because she fell in love with a Gaboya boy. It was yesterday when she was taken to Ethiopia and granted asylum. The father of the boy also got his hand broken, so this is a culture, a practice rooted in discrimination. Our clan does not accept if an Isaac boy asks their girl's hand in marriage. They say tomorrow he will abuse our girl, or her mother-in-law or sister-in-law will abuse her by saying this midgan brought by our son. So marriage is the concrete manifestation of discrimination. Other practices might be converted. Marriage is an adequate example of this culture of discrimination.
When
the married couple fight, the woman will tell her husband, "Leave me, you midgan." The woman who marries a Gaboya man will always be harassed and bullied. She will be disowned and no one will visit her house. Her father will not visit her, nor will her mother and siblings. They will say, "We will not go to the house of the midgan."
The men and women from this community who choose to wed their cohorts from other clans face numerous challenges, including physical assault, ostracization, arrests, and abandonment. During our investigation, we have come across several instances of intermarriage between members of this community and individuals from other clans. However, because of fears of trouble, they all walked away from talking to us on camera. Finally, a family in Dami agreed to talk to us. It's Khadar Jama family consisting of him, wife and his several children. Unfortunately, on the day of the interview, Khadar's wife declined, anxious of harm from her brothers. Khadar doesn't have such fears and told us about this marriage.
waxaan isku baray magaalada Hargeysa waxaan barashada ka sii bilaabtay xaafadda oo ku wada sheegtan jirnay si dhuumasha.
We met in Hargeisa, we met in the neighborhood and started dating secretly. Finally, we reached a point where we decided to marry. We dared to do that knowing that we may face harsh repercussions such as jail or murder. Thanks to Allah, no harm was done to us, and now we are happy together. However, at our wedding, no one from her family has come to the ceremony. Instead, only my community attended to the wedding ceremony.
After 8 years and several children, Khadar Jama and his family have no ties with his in-laws. Still, they have not accepted his marriage to their daughter, and that causes him inexplicable pain.
We don't have any contact with my wife's family. They don't visit us and we don't visit them. You could understand this only if you're from our community and felt it firsthand. Imagine living in a city with your in-laws whom you don't know and you don't exchange greetings with them. It's a big problem.
Apart from the economic inequality, the taboo surrounding intermarriage is the most concrete form of discrimination against Gaboya people. Socially, it's the most enduring practice associated with the marginalization of this community. The rest of society and the leaders of the community must waiting for this taboo to die out by itself. Most elders will tell you that they advise against intermarriage because of the trouble it may cause.
مودة ورحمة. guurka waxa weeyaan
affection and compassion, that's what marriage is for. It brings people together. However, when we intermarry with other clans, there is no affection nor compassion, so what's the point? The woman is visited and abused by her peers telling her she married a midgan. The man is ostracized because he married an Achi woman. They will be disowned. These incidents occurred again and again here. It happened in Gabile, in Porama City, where a woman was banned. It also took place in Berbera. This happened over and over again. It got ugly. Few of the marriages succeeded, all others failed and faced hardships. In Gabile, a pregnant woman married to a member of our community while she was married to another man. They said instead of giving birth to a Midgan man, let this man take the baby. How can they say that? These are not bearable. So I can say this marriage thing is a very difficult thing, but currently I advise the men of our community not to marry from other clans because of the challenges they will face, except for the rare cases where both families are happy with the arrangement.
laakiin anu xaadirka waxaan ku taliyaa ragga aan dhalinyarta ama oday bulshadeena kula taliyaa inaanay guurka ku degdegin reeraha kale.
Politics is where the direction of society is decided. In fair and equal society, politics reflects the interests and views of all constituent communities. However, in the Somali case, the political arena is another space where inequality appears glaringly. All Somali authorities are criticized for inadequate representation for this marginalized community and that their participation in the political process is a mere decoration.
Somaliland saddex dhadhaar baa jira waa garsoor fulin sharci dejin.
Somaliland government has 3 branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. The community is not represented in the 82-member strong House of Representatives at all. In the cabinet, they have only one deputy minister, given by President Riali. There are no second to him. There are no director general, non-governor, secretary of local government, no deputy governor, no chief justice, no chief of a district. They hold 1.001 of all government positions. They are not counted in the rational number used for other people.
waxba rationalka tirada caadiga ah ee dadka kale ku xisaabtamayaan waxba kama aha. Mesela Puntland oo kale waxa ma dhaanto.
For example, Puntland is no better. They have one minister in the federal government of Somalia and few MPs in the parliament. They have 0 representation in Djibouti and they have one minister in Somali region of Ethiopia. It's like no representation at all, a droplet in an ocean.
marka de wahal wallam yakun shay'an madkuran wa farbad la daray.
The leaders of this community consider that another manifestation of the discrimination and denial of their right to equal existence.
It's the denial of person's existence. It's the denial of person's born right and sentencing him to lower status. He hears those utterances 10 times in the day and night, inside his house and outside from neighbors. It's impossible for the person to thrive. He only can be born and die.
inuu sarfeef garoobo oo uu noloshiisa caadiga inta sarfeef garowdo uu dhasho uu dhinto mooyaane.
On the other hand, this community's absence from circles of power undermines the government's role in eradicating the discrimination practice. Saeed Ahmed Jade is the only representative of this community in the 2 chambers of Somaliland's parliament. When we met him at his office, he told us that all successive Somaliland governments have utterly failed and overlooked their duty to end this practice.
Kan waa dastuurkii Somaliland. Dastuurkii Somaliland weeyaan waxa ku jira qodob ka hadlaya iyaga ka hadlaya.
This is the constitution of Somaliland. It has article about this community. It's Article 8 of Somaliland's Constitution, Clause B. It's here and reads like this: precedence and discrimination on grounds of ethnicity, clan affiliation, birth and residence is prohibited, and at the same time programs aimed at eradicating long-lasting bad practices shall be national obligation. That was what Clause B of the Constitution of Somaliland says. It's the obligation of the government to eradicate those long-standing practices that disadvantage the community and cripple their development. It clearly states that the government's responsibility to eradicate these ethnic-based discrimination practices. Every government that comes to power ignores the article.
That's coupled with the Mason government's role in ensuring equality by remedying the long-standing disadvantages of this community. When this community was sidelined from power, the voice that could have lobbied for their interests was also discarded. For example, Minister Mahdi Osman urges that this Gaboye needs affirmative action to cope with the historical disadvantages of centuries of subjugation. However, since their representation is very low, he realizes that this is unlikely at the moment.
والله إني ظروفتهم بيوكلفتي. وحنا نسير نمنكا أنت بارلمانكا قشوا.
The conditions of this community have compelled me to run to office. I thought to myself, enter the parliament and serve this community with legislation by introducing affirmative action, for instance, that will allow them to receive free education and access employment. Because this community doesn't know how to work the system. They didn't even know their rights before I came. Because they are lagging behind the rest of society. They need affirmative action to catch up. They need to be employed in the ministries. I feel that they are absent from government employment because I'm here as a minister. The official from this community cannot do much by himself because all eyes are on him. They need a quota in government employment by decreeing every ministry to employ a certain number of people from this community. The competent one should also be able to compete for choice and be an additional number to this community if he or she succeeds. But it is not logical to ask a person from this community the same qualifications as another from the rest of the society. Because the latter has advantages. He could have had a private tutor because his parents are wealthy. How could the son of penniless man compete with the privileged?
Like all aspects of life, it's not easy for people in this community to become successful in the political arena. They face challenges unique to them that are based on the discrimination practice. Directly or indirectly, they are told that they have no business in government.
maalin kasta way jirtaa maaha saacad sanad maaha bil maaha.
Yes, it happens every day and every hour. I met such abuse yesterday. Our culture has not yet accepted. That an individual could have an opinion of his own, that he can join a party and believe in the party agenda. I was assaulted in 2017 while I was the Secretary of Justice of Wadani Party. I was hurt badly. There was no other reason except for the conviction that Baraka Jama has no right to work on Somaliland politics, to seek what's best for Somaliland because allegedly that's between other clans. Those are some of the challenges that one may face.
Perhaps that explains why Minister Mahdi is protective of the youth from his community who are dare to become politicians no matter differences in views.
For example, Barkhat.
Take Barkhat for example. Sometimes he gets carried away and insults us, the government. Some people ask me, why don't you respond to him? I always say that I see victory in the mere fact that he is criticizing us, that he is expressing his views. Let the man talk. The English say, who dares is one who wins. The issue of marginalization is deeper than people think. Integration is hard even after college, because society doesn't accept them. The fact is, they live with a bad, racist society.
Nevertheless, it is obvious that the injustice Gaboye suffered is not right and appropriate, considering everything else aside their essential functions for society. At a time when world trade was not open as now, and every society had to contend with its local production, Gaboye was the factory of the Somali society. They produced all their material needs, utensils, clothes, weapons, etc. This leads to the question, where has this odd practice come from? What has allowed it to persist this long? Why has it survived the major changes of the last century? The colonial rule, independence, and urbanization. Myths are stories which are neither true or false. They are the most powerful things in the world and the basis of all societies.
dhibtan haysataa waxay u baahan tahay cilmi baadhisteeda oo weliba mid qoto dheer.
This issue begs exploration, to study it deeply and to know where it comes from. It appears to us that it originated with the professions and factions of this community to society, such as shoemaking, barbershop, and ironwork.
It's the justification of crucial norms and events of a particular society's history. The subjugation of this community is underpinned by a myriad of myths that are held by other Somalis. Without them, these practices couldn't have survived this long. Some of these myths seem to be referring to a period of social upheaval of political and religious nature. Others are related to the artisanship of this community and their traditional occupations. These myths are told in different forms that share more similarities than differences across all Somali territories. In Somaliland, one of the most known is the story of Sheikh Yusuf Al-Kaunain, better known as Al-Barkadi, and Buhur Bahair, a mythical religious and political leader of Gaboye. According to the myth, Saint Sheikh Yusuf Al-Kaunain freed the people of the area from the tyranny of Buhur Bahair by performing a miracle and burying him in a hill southeast of Agesa. His descendants are said to be a segment of Gaboye people who still collect his blood money in the form of alms paid when a boy is born. Ahmad Imam Warsame, a traditional king of this community, however, believes in a different version of the story. To share it with us, he took us to the Buhur Bahair Hill, the place he is allegedly interred. The site is a couple of 100 meters south to the tomb of Sheikh Al-Barkadu. Apart from those contradiction myths, it is quite hard to know for sure when this practice began and how long it persisted. However, a terrifying theory argues that it accompanied the Somalis from the beginning of their history, that it originated before Islam came to Somaliland, even before the Eastern Kushites dispersed and the Somali became a separate nation.
Those are just silly myths. They claim that Sheikh Yusuf Al-Kaunain went through the mountain 3 times and dared Bu'ur Ba'ir to do the same. And finally Yusuf Al-Kaunain destroyed the mountain upon him with a prayer. That's just a Somali myth and a propaganda against our community. The real name of the man they call Bu'ur Ba'ir is Sheikh Muhammad Al-Hanifa. He was a religious man that used to teach Islam to people. The rock we saw in our sand is the one they claim was used for fertility purposes, but that was not the case. Rocks can't have anything to do with fertility. The Sheikh used the rock to test if women are having their period, and if that was the case, he would isolate the women from their husbands. He did that because people did not know religion very well then. When women completed their period, he would test them again by ordering them to sit on the rock. If no blood is seen on the rock, he would return them to their husbands. But the propaganda version of the story says that the Sheikh used to keep those women for himself as harem, and that's just a myth. The matter of fact is that our clan used to be a royalty in this land. They ruled this country, and Somalis, with the help of foreigners, raised up against them and took power from them. That happens all over the world. Dynasties are overthrown. But the crime was the lasting effect of that coup d'etat, which is stigmatization and marginalization.
Somaliland's Deputy Minister of Health, Mahdi Abdullah Osman Buri, offers an economical explanation. In his thinking, the artisans of this community produced more than the society needed, and thus the value of their production plummeted. To counter that, they were forced to disperse on land so everyone could find a market for his products. This has made them vulnerable to a great deal of exploitation because in the tribal communities, the stranger is weakest. No matter how it started or how long it lasted, this practice has devastating consequences on its victim community. It has left psychological damage and impact on the essence of Gaboye's psyche.
xaaladda halkaa ka soo baxday waxay noqonaysaa ninkan inuu noqdo ruux dee ayagii la degan oo dependent ku ahaa moogta.
That has resulted in Gaboy community being dependent on others. The man used to go out for a hunt and serve his masters for other time. When they went to war, he made tools for them. And while he is living with them, he is most vulnerable. The youngest of the household could have bullied him.
markay ka dhintaan awrkii yaraa iyo wixii bay soo xaraashaanoo waxay ku soo noqdaan dee magaaladii.
It created inequality that is based on the structure of the Somali society that sentenced members of this community to low socio-economic status. The major upheavals of the colonization, independence and civil war has not altered this. The question is how to get past this centuries-old practice. Fortunately, this community is ready to lead the solution. The majority of the solutions they are proposing are ones they're ready to work on.
marka boqolkiiba 95 waxay ku xiran tahay ummadani inay xaqeeda hesho.
This community gaining its rights depends on 95% of themselves to come together and work on improving their conditions.
Anu ma aaminsani inay Somali intay isku tartoonaysan reerka waan cafinaynayo dhibkan ka qaadana.
I don't believe that Somalis will ever come together and say, let's forgive this community and end marginalizing them. That never happened in the world all through history. Every community ends the injustice against them by themselves. Every nation community liberates herself by herself. Each nation has come with the requirements of victory. No nation gives another nation a freedom.
bulshadana inay isku tashato aysan hadda ay ku jira wax badan ka bedelaan bulshadana inay fakarto
waxa kale xalku ila muuqdaa midnimo gudahooda dadka wax tirsanayaan ka soo jeedo ama hal hayb soo.
Also, the solution I believe is in unity among those communities which I am from. If they unite their strength, they can secure their rights. Also, to depend on the Almighty. Another one is to be magnanimous when they become victorious and don't seek revenge and emulate Prophet Joseph. Third point is to improve education. Fourth, to make savings a habit. 5, to expand their horizon. 6, to support everyone who is working on the issues, whether from their community or outside.
qaacidadaas waxay anfacdaa ama waxa weeye wax ka tartaa inay dadkan soo jeestaan xaqiiqada dhabtan marka waxa weeye qaacidan baa kala hadlaysa.
This formula will help this community become aware of its reality. It says this community must first educate itself, first on faith and religion, and secondly, on beneficial needed provisional competences. It needs to produce the doctors needed, the religious leaders, the engineers, financiers, etc. Secondly, they need to have a saving culture, and their earnings shouldn't be consumed entirely like previous generations. This could help them impart this and start business after wealth accumulation. When they have those three things, they will be small in number, but big in quality, and that's the most fortunate community in the world. Because in our country, large communities don't know themselves from Adam, but smaller ones are close-knit.
markaa shaqaysanaya ee wax baranaya waxa weeye bulshada soo dhex galay in tacabkoodu noqo tacab dhigasho leh.
Somalis are always sympathetic to the causes of racial injustices and oppression across the world. They closely follow the racism in the West, Palestine, and Uyghurs of China and express profound empathy with them. However, that good is undermined by the fact that the Somalis are not innocent of committing similar injustices. A large segment of their society is subjected to humiliation and multifaceted discrimination. What's this paradox for? Why are the Somalis righteous to the outside and cruel internally? Why do they only see the crimes committed by others? Do you think it's time that Somalis reflect on themselves before pointing fingers? Why can't they afford this small dream to their fellow brethren? Sure, realizing this dream will take time, probably more than our lifetimes and yours. However, the solution can be started now. Acknowledging the crime could be the first step. Realizing its pain become next. Helping this community in its strive to pick up the pieces will go a long way too. It's a long path, one that needs moral courage and deep reflection. But the reward is nothing like it. It's nothing less than the goodness and justice for the entire Somali society.